The Thanksgiving table was set at the Forrester mansion, polished to perfection under the warm glow of the chandeliers. Golden candles flickered between crystal glasses, and laughter echoed faintly across the vast dining room as family members tried to fill the silence that had followed them for weeks. But beneath the surface of ritual civility, beneath the wine, the carved turkey, the small talk about fashion campaigns and business ventures, something heavier lingered in the air. Luna Nozawa's name had not yet been spoken, but it hovered above every conversation, an unspoken ghost sitting at the table among them. For weeks, the family had avoided the subject. They called it her passing, as if it were a quiet surrender, not the violent chaos that had ended in a storm of headlights, broken glass, and unanswered questions. But as the camera of fate began to zoom in on the fractured piece of the Forrester and Spencer clans, the truth that had been carefully swept aside began to claw its way back into the light. Luna Nozawa's death was supposed to be simple. A tragic accident, a desperate woman's final flight from justice, a car appearing out of nowhere as she crossed the fog-drenched road by the coast. Detective Baker had called it an unfortunate but conclusive case. There had been an accident, a witness's vague description, and a few personal effects scattered near the wreckage: a bracelet, a torn scarf, a half-burned letter addressed to Will Spencer Jr. But what there hadn't been was a body. Baker said it was the ocean that had taken her. The tide was strong that night. Debris washed up for days. It was, by all accounts, the kind of tragedy that begged for closure but refused to grant it. And yet, for those who had truly known Luna, for Will, for Poppy, for even those like Katie and Bill who had only brushed against the fringes of her story, closure was the one thing none of them could find. When the family gathered that night, the air felt different. There was too much tension in every glance, too much meaning behind every half-smile. Ridge raised his glass to toast family and forgiveness, but even his words trembled beneath the weight of what they didn't say. Steffi glanced toward Finn, her husband's hand gripping the table so tightly his knuckles whitened. Brooke shifted uncomfortably in her chair, aware of every silence, every sigh. Bill, sitting near the end of the table, had brought Katie and Will as part of a fragile effort to mend the fractures Luna had left behind. But Will's eyes were distant, unfocused, as if he were seeing the accident over and over again: the headlights, the scream, the sudden impact. Katie had tried to pull him back to normalcy, to convince him that it was time to move on. "The past can't keep holding us hostage," she had whispered before dinner began. But the words sounded hollow, even to her. She had seen the fear in her son's eyes, the tremor in his hands every time he touched his phone. The messages had started a week ago. Short, haunting, and signed. "You think she's gone, but she's not. Ask your father about the car." At first, Will thought it was a cruel prank, some stranger feeding on the endless speculation surrounding Luna's death. But when the third message came with a photograph, grainy but unmistakable, of Luna standing near the old coastal road just minutes before the supposed accident, the world around him shifted. She was alive in that picture. Terrified, yes, but breathing. Her eyes reflected headlights approaching from behind. Will showed the message to Katie in secret, and she, in turn, brought it to Bill. The confrontation that followed had nearly broken the fragile calm between them. Bill had sworn he knew nothing. He insisted he hadn't been near the coastal road that night, that his car had been in the garage. But Katie had caught the hesitation in his voice, the brief flicker of panic before he composed himself. She'd known him too long to miss it. Now, as he sat at the head of the table, carving the turkey with practiced ease, she could barely look at him. Every word he said sounded rehearsed, defensive, as if he were trying to convince himself of a truth he didn't fully believe. When the plates were cleared and dessert served, it was Hope who finally spoke what everyone else was avoiding. "We should say something," she said quietly. "About Luna." The room froze. Brooke's fork clinked against her plate. Ridge looked up, startled. Even Bill paused, his knife suspended in midair. Steffi was the first to respond. "We've all said enough," she snapped, but her voice betrayed unease. "The police closed the case. We need to let it go." But Finn shook his head. It's not that simple. I've been reviewing the reports. There are things that don't add up. Ridge frowned. Like what? The timing, Finn said. The accident was reported at 10:47 p.m., but Luna's last known sighting was at 10:52. The timestamps don't make sense. And the tire marks. Baker said they belonged to an SUV, but the pattern matches a very specific model. A Spencer model. The silence that followed was unbearable. Will's breath caught. Katie turned sharply toward Bill. That's ridiculous, Bill said quickly. You think I hit her? That I left her there? His voice rose with anger, but his face paled. No one's saying that, Finn said calmly, though his eyes said otherwise. But the car Baker impounded wasn't found until days later, abandoned near the canyon. It was wiped clean, but there was residue of ocean salt in the engine, as if it had been near the water that night. Ridge leaned forward. And you're just telling us this now? I needed to be sure, Finn replied. I didn't want to accuse anyone until I had proof. He looked toward Bill. But I think someone in your family knows what happened. Will stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. Stop it, he shouted. It's my fault. I was supposed to meet her that night. She called me, said she needed help. I didn't go. I ignored her. His voice cracked. If I had gone, she wouldn't have been in that road. Katie rushed to him, but he pulled away. You don't understand, he said, trembling. She was scared. She said someone was following her. The word someone fell heavy in the air. Before anyone could respond, there was a knock at the door. The sound was sharp, deliberate, slicing through the thick tension. Everyone turned. Eric, sitting at the far end, rose unsteadily and went to answer it. When the door opened, the candlelight caught a figure standing in the shadows, a woman, pale and trembling, her clothes soaked with rain. It was Poppy, Luna's mother. Her arrival was not unexpected, yet it changed everything. She stepped inside, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow from weeks of sleepless nights. I need to speak to all of you, she said, her voice shaking. About my daughter. Ridge gestured for her to sit, but she refused. You've all been living comfortably, she said bitterly, acting like she was just another scandal that burned out. But she didn't die. Not like you think. Katie's heart stopped. What do you mean? Poppy looked straight at Bill. She called me before she ran. She said someone tried to kill her. She said it wasn't an accident. The words detonated like a bomb. Brooke covered her mouth, eyes wide. Ridge swore under his breath. Finn leaned forward. Do you have proof? Poppy nodded. From her coat, she pulled a flash drive, its metallic glint catching the candlelight. This was sent to me 2 nights ago, she said. No return address. It's footage from a traffic camera on the coast. It shows the car that hit her. Bill's eyes darted toward the door, but it was too late. Finn had already taken the drive from Poppy's hand and plugged it into the television. The room fell into silence as the video began to play. The grainy footage showed the deserted highway, fog curling around the guardrails. A figure appeared, Luna, stumbling, crying, looking over her shoulder. Then came the headlights. The car swerved once, twice, before hitting her full-on. The video froze at the moment of impact, the license plate briefly illuminated before disappearing into darkness. Katie gasped. Ridge stood, his face pale. Brooke whispered, No, because the plate was unmistakable. It was Bill's. Bill stood motionless, his jaw tightening. That's impossible, he said. Someone must have stolen it. Finn interrupted. Then why did you report your car missing after the accident? For once, Bill had no answer. His mouth opened, then closed. The weight of every eye in the room pressed against him. Poppy's voice trembled as she spoke again. You didn't just hit her. You left her there. My daughter begged for help. I didn't know. Bill shouted, finally breaking. I thought it was an animal, a shadow. I didn't see her until it was too late. I stopped, but she was gone. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. His voice cracked. I didn't mean to kill her. Katie staggered backward, her face pale with shock. You lied, she whispered. You let us all think she was gone, killed by a stranger. You let Will blame himself. Bill turned toward her, desperate. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to protect all of you. By hiding a murder? Ridge spat. You let her mother bury an empty coffin. Poppy's eyes filled with tears. Do you know what it's like to bury nothing? To stand over dirt and pretend it's your child. The room dissolved into chaos. Voices shouting, accusations flying, the entire legacy of two powerful families unraveling in one catastrophic revelation. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, Finn looked at the frozen frame of the video again and noticed something in the corner, a shadow moving just before the car hit Luna. Another figure, standing by the roadside, watching. Someone else was there, he said quietly. The room went silent again. Who? Steffi whispered. Poppy's face went pale. Luna mentioned a woman, she said softly. Someone she trusted. Someone who betrayed her. Katie's phone buzzed suddenly, the vibration cutting through the silence. She glanced at the screen and froze. The message read, You've seen enough. Stop digging, or you'll end up like her. When she looked up, everyone's eyes were on her. The room had become a mirror of fear, every reflection revealing guilt, shame, and something darker. Outside, the wind howled against the Forrester mansion, rattling the windows as if the world itself wanted to bear witness. Inside, Thanksgiving dinner lay forgotten, plates half full, wine gone cold, the warmth of family replaced by the chill of truth. By midnight, Baker had been called back to reopen the case. Poppy left without a word, the flash drive clutched in her hand. Bill sat alone at the table, staring at the melted wax pooling around the candles. He had confessed, but the confession brought no peace, only a deeper dread. Because as the night wore on, one thought refused to leave his mind. If Luna had truly died that night, why were there still new messages being sent from her phone? And if she hadn't died, then who or what had he actually hit? The camera panned out slowly, the Forrester estate glowing faintly against the endless dark. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of their guilt, a figure stood by the coast, her face obscured by the mist, her eyes fixed on the waves. When she lifted her hand, the moonlight caught the silver bracelet on her wrist. The same bracelet that had been found shattered at the scene. Luna Nozawa was still out there, watching, waiting. And this time, she wasn't running anymore. The city of Los Angeles had begun to quiet after months of chaos, yet in the silence that followed Luna's death, something far more unsettling began to take root. The story was supposed to be over, the trial, the scandal, the heartbreak, all neatly concluded by a tragic and no one could stop talking about. But the truth has a strange way of refusing to die, and for Katie, Electra, and Will, peace remained as elusive as it had always been. The bold and the beautiful had long been a stage where passion and guilt danced dangerously close, but on that cold Tuesday in late November, the show's heart beat slower, darker, heavier, with the weight of a secret ready to break open once more. Katie Logan had always believed she was the rational one, the woman who could hold a family together even as every bond around her frayed. After Luna's death, a shocking, violent end that came after her miscarriage and daring escape from prison, Katie told herself it was time to move forward. She had taken Bill's offer to join Spencer Publications, more out of necessity than pride, after losing her role at Forrester Creations. The change was meant to bring stability, a new start for her and Will. But beneath the polite smiles and carefully measured workdays, something else simmered, a low, constant hum of anxiety she couldn't quite name. The first text came on a Monday morning, short and cryptic. You think it's over, but it isn't. Katie frowned at the message, assuming it was spam or one of the countless trolls who thrived on gossip about Luna's death. She deleted it without a thought. But by that evening, another appeared. She never died. Ask Electra. The words chilled her blood.
She didn't respond.
Instead, she stared at her phone for a long time, the screen glowing like a secret she couldn't unsee. Across town, Electra stood in her apartment surrounded by chaos, sketches, clothes, empty coffee cups, all relics of the career she had nearly lost because of Luna. She had once been Luna's friend, her confidant, before everything had spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and tragedy. The guilt still clung to her like perfume she couldn't wash off. When she received the same text later that night, she felt a familiar panic twist in her stomach. The message wasn't just words. It was an accusation. She hadn't told anyone about the night Luna came to her before the escape, wild-eyed, desperate, begging for help. Electra had turned her away, too frightened to get involved. And then, days later, Luna was gone. Katie called Electra the next morning, her voice brittle. "I need to see you," she said, not bothering to explain why. They met at Il Giardino, the same restaurant where Luna had last been seen alive. The irony was suffocating. Electra arrived late, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "I've been getting messages," she confessed before Katie could speak. "They say she's still alive." Katie's jaw tightened. It's someone's sick idea of revenge. But even as she said it, her heart knew better. There had been too many inconsistencies in the investigation, too many unanswered questions. Luna's body had never been shown to the public. The autopsy report had been sealed. Everything about the case had been rushed, controlled, too neatly wrapped. Meanwhile, Bill had begun to notice the tension between the two women. His instincts, sharpened by years of ruthless business maneuvering, told him something was off. He had built his empire on uncovering truths others wanted buried, but this time, the lies were too close to home. His son Will had withdrawn into himself since Luna's death. The young man who once spoke with conviction about forgiveness now barely met his father's eyes. Bill assumed it was grief or guilt. But one night, as he passed Will's room, he heard the faint chime of a phone and a voice whispering, "I'm sorry." Will had been receiving messages too. "You know what happened that night. Tell them the truth before someone else does." He couldn't tell if they were real or hallucinations born of guilt. He hadn't told anyone about the letter Luna had left him, crumpled and bloodstained, found in his car days after she vanished. He destroyed it, terrified of what it implied. But now, as the texts kept coming, he wondered if destroying the letter had destroyed his chance to understand what had really happened. At Spencer Publications, tension grew unbearable. Katie tried to focus on her work, but every vibration of her phone made her heart skip. Electra began coming by the office more often, under the guise of helping Will transition back into creative work, but Katie knew she was avoiding her own demons. Then, on the morning of November 25th, it happened. A final message appeared on both women's phones simultaneously. "One of you knows the truth. It's time to confess." That same day, Bill announced a family meeting.
He wanted closure, he said.
Thanksgiving was coming, and he refused to let ghosts haunt their table another year. "We all deserve peace," he told them, his voice softer than usual. But peace, like everything else in their world, came with a price. As they sat in his sleek, glass-walled office overlooking the city, the silence was almost unbearable. Katie clasped her hands together, Electra stared at the floor, and Will looked like he might break apart. Then, without warning, Will spoke. "It's my fault," he said, his voice low but steady. Everyone froze. "Luna didn't die because she fell. She died because of me." Katie's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" Will's eyes filled with tears. "She called me that night. She said she was scared, that someone was following her. I told her not to come here, that I couldn't protect her anymore. She begged me to meet her. I didn't go. I turned off my phone. I thought if I ignore her, she'd finally stop." He choked on the words. "The next morning, she was gone. And when I heard she'd escaped, I thought maybe it was better that way. But now, these messages, someone knows I left her to die." Katie moved to comfort him, but Electra's face went pale. "It wasn't just you," she said quietly. "She came to me too. The night before she called you. She said she had proof, something about Will's inheritance, about Bill being manipulated. She wanted to show me, but said I wasn't ready. I told her to leave. I thought she was on something, that she was just spiraling again. But she wasn't. She knew something. Bill's composure cracked. What kind of proof? He demanded. Electra hesitated. She mentioned a recording. Something that could ruin a family. She said it involved Forrester and Spencer both. She said she'd die before letting it go public. The air thickened. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Katie's phone vibrated again, the screen flashing with a new message. She read it silently, her face draining of color. It's from her, she whispered. It says, "The truth dies if you stay silent." Panic spread like wildfire. Bill ordered his security team to trace the messages, but the results were inconclusive. The texts were coming from an encrypted system, one sophisticated enough to mask its origin. Someone's playing with us, Bill growled. But Katie shook her head.
No.
Someone's warning us. That evening, as the city lights flickered on, Katie sat alone in her office, replaying everything in her mind. The guilt that had once belonged only to Will and Electra now infected her too. She had spent years covering other people's mistakes, burying secrets under the guise of love. Maybe this was her punishment, watching history repeat itself through her son. When Electra entered quietly, Katie didn't look up. "You think Luna's alive?" she asked. Electra hesitated. "No," she said softly. "But I think someone wants us to wish she was." Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, a figure sat at a cluttered desk, the glow of multiple phones reflecting in her eyes. A scar traced along her jawline, half hidden beneath the curtain of her hair. She typed another message, her fingers trembling. "They think confession will save them. It won't." On the desk beside her lay a single silver bracelet engraved with the letter L. Luna's. The next morning, Katie arrived at the office to find Bill already there, pacing. "The text stopped," he said grimly. "Whoever was sending them is gone." But gone didn't mean finished. When he left the room, Katie unlocked her phone and reread the final message she had received overnight. "I forgive you. But they won't." She didn't show it to anyone. In the following days, guilt took on new forms. Will started therapy, determined to face the demons he had ignored. Electra quit her job at Forrester and disappeared into quiet philanthropy, perhaps trying to balance karma through kindness. Bill became colder, more distant, throwing himself into work as though profit could cleanse the past. But it was Katie who carried the weight of it all, the keeper of their collective sins. She began receiving new messages in December, though these were different. No threats, no warnings. Just fragments of what felt like memory. Photographs from the night Luna died. The prison gate, the car on the highway, a hand pressed against the glass. In the last photo, a shadow stood behind Luna, half in light, half in darkness. Katie printed the image and locked it in her drawer. She didn't show it to anyone, not even Bill. Some truths, she realized, destroy not with revelation but with the slow corrosion of silence. The more she thought about that night, the more she wondered if Luna's death had ever been about revenge or love. Maybe it had always been about control, someone pulling strings long before any of them saw the web. By the end of November, Los Angeles had returned to its glittering facade, but for those who had been touched by Luna's story, nothing sparkled the same. The confession that had shattered them didn't bring closure. It only exposed how guilt travels from one soul to another, like an unending contagion. Will had confessed, but his truth only deepened the mystery. Electra